Hey, everybody. Welcome to Double Shot of Steelers. I'm Dejan Kovacevic of DK Pittsburgh Sports. Today was the third and final day of week one of OTAs. These things get all kinds of labels, and yet to the naked eye, they don't look or sound or feel any different. When you have a week of OTAs, and then you have another week of OTAs, and then you have the mandatory mini camp, which used to just be mini camp, but now they stamp mandatory in front of it so that you can tell the difference between the voluntary and the mandatory stuff. The activities are all the same. The intensity of the activities are all the same. And not going to lie to you here, one of the things that ends up feeling more prevalent than anything else at these things is you've got a lot of time to think. You're watching stuff, you're being careful and everything, but you've got a lot of time to think. One of the things that I think about, boy, is this general, is whether or not this team's good, or as Larry David would say on Curb Your Enthusiasm, pretty good. How was that? I do all right with that one? It was pretty good. Okay. And whether or not this team is even that good, it's hard to say. Mostly because of the quarterback situation. I think everybody's going to back off of it for the same reason that you see bettors absolutely flipping out whenever a quarterback goes down on a game week. All the odds change. They'll even remove the team from the lines and everything because, wow, there goes the entire game. And you know what? More often than not, they're justified in doing so. They're not in the business of throwing their own money away. But for this team, I'm sorry. I still see stuff. I still see players. And now with some of these younger guys, I see potential. I see something on the defensive line, for example, that's forming that looks like it could be real. It's not going to be like this, but it's going to come eventually. They added two really significant pieces there in Derek Harmon and Y.A. Black, especially Harmon. And I don't mean to, I'm constantly lumping them together, and I shouldn't do that. There's a lot of different reasons to like this team, but how good really are they? And Todd Walter says here, this team doesn't have an identity. They don't know who they are anymore. And we can say that based on any number of reasons, or in your case, in all likelihood, from the way you're sounding here, criticisms. We can do that. All I'm talking about here is how they'll be in 2025. I think they're going to be pretty good. I really do. There's still a lot of players here. There's still a lot of reason to think that this team could, A, significantly improve on offense, independent of who's quarterback, and B, shore up some things defensively, some of which, like the run defense, I feel got exaggerated or extra pronounced in the final stretch of the season, when in fact they ended up a top 10 team in run defense and were a top 5 team for most of the season. So we're going to talk about this with Chris Halleck when we come back right after this little break.
At DK Pittsburgh Sports, we take pride in coverage that connects our city's fans to their favorite teams. Now, that connection's stronger than ever. Introducing our all-new state-of-the-art app. Find expert inside reporting and original podcasts. Check live box scores. Track the latest stats. Chat it up with our community of thousands of fans, all in one place. The new app from DK Pittsburgh Sports. Coverage that connects.
What's happening, Chris?
It's been a good day. It's been a good week.
Why do you say that? You just took like a deep breath there.
It's just been good, man. It's been good. It's having actual football to talk about, kind of, football in shorts, but it's still football. It's exciting. also, dealing with, things that get put out there and why they get put out there. And it's fun stuff, man. Fun time of the year.
I don't even sound like I want to know what that is. Deborah says, she says, I agree with you, DK. I feel good about the enthusiasm just watching the interviews from OTAs. We've got a couple more of those for you here today, Deborah. They're ready to roll here as soon as Chris will give us a little bit of an intro to them. But to me, and I've said this all week, that what you like is the chance to interact with them, to see what they're thinking, to feel their energy. Okay. One thing that players, this is professional athletes really across the board, are great at doing is compartmentalizing their own missions. Okay. The things that they have to do as individuals, and then what they have to commit to the collective, from what you'll commonly hear them refer to as the outside noise. So OTAs are the first time these guys have to deal with any of us for months. So they've just spent 3-4 months really not fussing over quarterbacks and rumors and speculation and stuff like that. And then one day there's 24 of us walking up to you, with cameras and microphones, and it might as well be artillery from the way they're reacting. It's like, really? That's what you guys have been talking about this whole time? They lock in.
Yeah. The one thing that I love hearing from all these guys is, anytime there are questions brought up about any of the stuff going on, obviously the big thing is the continued Aaron Rodgers stuff.
Sure. And it should be.
Right. But the players are handling it really well. They're just like, Zach Frazier asked today about, how quickly do you need all the quarterbacks in so you can start building chemistry with them, blah, blah, blah. And Zach he kind of played it down. He goes, well, first off, I'm just focused on the guys who are here. I'm not focused on anybody who's not here. And, it's like, but this time of year, I'm working, I'm snapping with all the quarterbacks. That's what this time of the year is all about. It's not about, hey, we're about to go play a game next week. We have to make sure that we're, really in sync with each other. This is the time of year where you just, get more familiar with everybody. And would you like to have everybody there? Sure. But it's also voluntary at this point, just because that's just the level that they're at. And that's the way it is.
Those of you who guessed correctly, or guessed that Dolly, my wife, went out to Starbucks, you were dead on. That's exactly where she went. I actually ordered her drink and then left it there.
Oh boy.
Almost there. Do better.
Husband of the year, baby. Right here. That's a great way to get barred. But she went over there and got business taken care of. We're going to take care of some of this video business that I mentioned to you. Let's start off just having a little bit of fun here. This is exactly 26 seconds of just sights and sounds and stuff from the day, so you get some kind of feel of what we're talking about when we're talking about OTAs. Now, who's going to be the first person to observe, Chris, that upside down trash cans were used in one of those drills? Like, really? Really? Is this why you're getting those dark grades from the Players Association? You're so cheap that you're making twin usage of trash. What is neat, though, about those drills, we take them for granted when we're watching them, but there's a couple of things that come to mind. One is that every time there's a player involved who has the football in his hands, there's some element of ball control to it.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, there's somebody swatting you now with that boxing glove on a stick.
Yeah.
There's a coach waiting at the other end to try to pop it loose. They'll even occasionally try to surprise you. Somebody will walk behind you or whatever and do one of these, and oh, look, I was holding on to it. You're knocking that thing out of my hands. And the other one is the competitive aspect. The one where you saw the linebackers doing it kind of looks like scissors across the curbs.
Yeah.
Well, they lined 2 linebackers up opposite each other so that they don't get to set their own pace. They're facing each other as they do it. It's a really, really smart way to conduct a drill.
Yeah. And when we're talking about, ball security, you will observe this during training camp. So I can say this, without, tipping anything, but, running backs don't get tackled even like during live contact. They don't typically just get full blown tackled during training camp or practice. But that doesn't mean that those reps can't be utilized well. So when they break through the line and they just keep sprinting, oftentimes defensive backs and linebackers will chase them and continue to swat at the ball as they continue to sprint down the field. It's just something that Mike Tomlin has instilled in them about ball control, ball security, and then on the defensive side, obviously going after the ball, ball seeking. That is something the Steelers do well, and their turnover margin is that's the fruit of that labor pretty much.
I'll tell you what, for the legitimate criticisms that Tomlin has earned, including for me and others over the past few months, the one thing you can say about him year after year after year is that the turnover margin is healthy, and that applies in both directions. And he's not satisfied when the takeaways, for example, aren't number one. It goes to the talk that I had with Deshaun Elliott this week, where he said, listen, I know what kind of season I had. He was referring to his extraordinary record-setting tackle season in terms of his tackle rate, success rate. And he said, but you know what? How many of those opportunities were there where I could have instead gone for the football? I asked him back, like, well, are you worried that you might sacrifice some of that tackle efficiency if you're just, doing this and you're swatting away? And he's like, well, we have linebackers, we have other people who can make that. I've got to start going for that's not something he thought of himself.
Yeah.
Is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, for sure.
That's coming all the way down from the head coach. Like, they like it, they appreciate it. At the same time, imagine if we've gotten the ball there.
Yeah, absolutely. That's just that is something that continues to be instilled in this defense is ball searching, trying to take the ball away, whether it's, obviously interceptions, but forced fumbles, man. Forced fumbles is a big thing. I mean, I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think TJ led the league in forced fumbles last year. I honestly can't remember if he did or not. And I think Alex Highsmith did a couple of years ago too.
He definitely, that's true. Into his contract year, he did.
Yeah. So like, this is something that absolutely happens on the South side. It is instilled in them to, on the offensive side, you are securing the football. On the defensive side, you are going after the football. And then they make it a competition, amongst each other. If the defense doesn't get enough balls to hit the ground, if they don't rip enough balls out, or if they don't pick off enough passes, Tomlin gets onto them. If the offense keeps, putting the ball on the ground, Tomlin gets onto them. So Tomlin's getting onto somebody no matter what, because that's just how it's emphasized there.
Jax Flex says, which rookie is going to be your interview go-to each week during the season? I have a couple of things to say about that, but first, here's a little bit of the answer to that actual question.
First day was a work in progress. I didn't feel great about my first day, just coming off the field, but it was a good learning experience for me. And I don't, I wasn't expecting to be perfect on my first day. I'm not going to be perfect. That's the thing. You got to learn. Like, you got to, especially me being young, like, you got to be able to roll with the punches and know that you're going to make some mistakes, especially being a rookie. And it's how you learn from it and come back from it and don't get affected by that. Like, the second I, mess up and then get in my head and shut down, like, that's when problems happen, but I felt like day one, was a little bit just wasn't really comfortable yet. Didn't really know where my, feet were, was a little off timing. And then day 2 and 3, I think I've been a lot better.
See, isn't it funny? Because we were talking on Tuesday, you and I, and watching him, that he was really struggling. Okay. And we threw a hint to that effect in the show. If you're one of those people that pays really close attention and parses every syllable of what it is that we or anybody else might say about the Steelers, you would have picked up on that. That, of course, by the way, was Will Howard. I don't know if he's gotten to the point where we could just show him and not introduce him.
Yeah.
But he did not have a good day one. And I can now say that since he just said it. We can get a little bit specific since he was there. He was overthrowing guys as if they were 30 feet tall.
Yeah, they're pretty tall.
We were because one of them was to Calvin Austin, and I was joking with you, if there were 8 Calvin Austins stacked up on top of each other, they wouldn't have had a chance at that pass.
Right.
But this is why I also said it just doesn't matter. It was his first day. You see how excitable this kid is, how emotional he is. Matt Rizzo says that he seems like he's a leave it to Beaver. That's kind of a dated reference here, but I'm going to guess some people would get that. Just meaning he's just so innocent and so everything. He's going to be a work in progress, which is what everybody has said from day one. In fact, even preceding the draft, that he wasn't going to be your instant guy.
Yeah, I mean, again, the grand scheme of things, he was a 6th round pick, and there were some other, there's another part of that conversation with Will Howard that I even put in our Steelers feed on DKPittsburghSports.com, talking about even getting a small taste of the NFL in OTAs, and he went through a description of just the things that he's seeing when he is facing the defense. Just how much faster things are and how defenses disguise things differently than they do at the college level. And he's coming straight off of, winning a national championship with Ohio State. Like, you cannot get at a higher level at the college level. You just can't. And he's in OTAs. We're not even talking mini camp. We're not talking training camp or preseason or regular season. We're talking OTAs. This is voluntary football in shorts here. And he's already getting a taste of, whoa, this is not the same thing, this whatsoever. And it's a good thing for him and the Steelers both that they are approaching this with very much like he is going to be in a developmental role this year, number 3 probably on the depth chart. If he ends up having to play because of injuries, then so be it. But we'd really just like for him to sit for a year, learn behind Mason Rudolph, or, if and when Aaron Rodgers signs, learn behind Aaron Rodgers and use that year to your advantage, and
there's nothing wrong with that. We've been talking all along about how this search for a franchise quarterback has to be conducted with both quality and quantity. You need numbers.
Yep.
You need different age groups. You need different types of quarterbacks. I like this line here from Todd Yukich. Let's see if I can find it here. I lost it. He says Will was throwing high at the combine as well. It just doesn't matter.
Yeah.
If that tells you that the first time he ever shows up somewhere, he's going to struggle, that also doesn't matter, because there's only going to be one of those at every fresh level for him. It's completely understandable. It is not to be overanalyzed, and nobody needs to. Everybody seems I can tell right now in the live chat is just coming to his defense. He doesn't need it. Mike in Texas, Will Howard will have a rough time in his first preseason. Yes, and again in his first regulars, because almost everybody does. It's because of the perfection he expects of himself and his nerves. He'll settle down after that. There's nothing to get excessive about, but it is impressive that he brought it up.
Yeah, absolutely.
He brought it up. Nobody said to him, "Hey, kid, why were you terrible on day one?"
Right.
It just doesn't happen. RK says, I don't know why, but I've got a really good feeling about Will. Maybe because he's a local hometown kid. He's not, but I really like him. Yeah, Pennsylvania is a really wide state, but he has that quarterback swagger. He's from clear on the other side of the state, which might as well be Zimbabwe when it gets to Pennsylvania as far as what's local and what's not.
Downingtown, I think it is.
Yeah, that's out by Philly.
Yeah,
and he's also obviously got the time that he spent, which actually is closer to Pittsburgh in Columbus.
Yeah,
like a lot closer than Philadelphia is.
Yeah, I can attest to that. I'm the one. I drove out to Columbus to go cover the Ohio State Pro Day for drive to Columbus, and that's even on the northwest side of Columbus too. So it's like going opposite. It's still
Oh, RK explains himself. Guys, he's local to me. RK's from out there. Okay, I get it now. I get it.
Yeah.
Western New Jersey clarifies James Fairfield. In Justin Watson says, I have the same expectations for Howard that I had for T. Martin. Okay. Let's just let it play out.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah. Let's let it play out. Yeah.
You know, there's not much really to that here. Zach Frazier.
Yeah.
Spoke for the first time today. You can set this one up, Chris.
Yeah. Obviously, you know, a lot of emphasis on the offensive line this year, on a young offensive line, and, you know, had a chance to talk with Zach and really wanted to pick his brain on just his approach going into second year, because it's a completely different experience for players going into their second year than it is at a rookie year because of, you know, draft preparation, and then you have to go from all that grueling process of getting ready for the draft into now all of a sudden you're on an NFL team and you have to learn everything really fast. And this year it's not like that. So had a little over a minute to talk with Zach, and it was a good conversation.
Before we get to that, RK Man comes in and says, guys, I'm a girl, LOL, from Central PA, a Steelers fan. Okay, well, you're the one to put RK Man on the thing. What was I supposed to think? I apologize nonetheless. Let's get to what Zach Frazier had to say.
So how is it different this time around? Obviously, last year it's, you know, prep for the draft, everything like that, but now this time around you're part of the team already. How are you approaching it differently since it's a completely different situation?
Yeah, I feel like it's completely different. You kind of know what to expect now. Last year going into this time, you had no idea. You know, didn't know what to expect, didn't know what practices were like, still didn't have a good grasp of the playbook. So now it feels a lot better. It's nice.
So now that everything is, you know, kind of more secondhand to you, what can you take away from last year, all the experiences you went through, and now apply it to becoming hitting another level this year?
Yeah, I think it's cleaning up the mistakes and just trying to polish my game, and that's the main thing for me. I like to focus on, you know, what I can clean up and how I can be better as a football player, and yeah.
Any areas you're looking to improve, whether it's in run blocking, pass protection, communication, anything like that, or is it across the board?
Yeah, it's across the board. It's all those things. It's communication. It's hand play. I feel like everything. I'm pretty hard on myself. I feel like I can be better at everything. Hand placement, communication, just everything across the board.
You know, one of the questions that I have related to Frazier, and this includes when I'm speaking with him, and I'm going to guess you kind of had the same impression today in the conversation that we just showed that you had with him out on the grass there. Is he going to be that guy on that line? I am not talking about performance. And I think you know what I'm getting at here. You know, not everybody needs to be, listen, Marquise Pouncey, he's your center. He is your guy who's going to take over the line. He's going to be the central figure of that. Nobody should be attaching a Marquise label to him in any regard. They're different types of centers, right?
Yeah.
And Marquise is way up here, respectfully here, of Zach, okay?
Yep.
But at some point, this line needs an anchor. And part of that anchor, I think, has to be somebody taking charge. Now, Dan Moore was vocal in his own way. Dan Moore also, he stayed in his lane just enough, okay, where he would, to an extent, and I'm not saying this in any negative way. I mentioned earlier that athletes have to do this to an extent. They have to focus on themselves. Otherwise, they're not going to be any good to anybody, okay? And that was kind of Dan's thing. Dan knew what he was supposed to do and everything else, and he would challenge other guys, but I don't know that constituted outright leadership. Isaac Seumalo is too quiet for it. Mason McCormick's the exact opposite of quiet.
Yeah.
But I don't know that he has what's the word? The French word. Cachet? Is it cachet? To be that guy? Who is it?
I honestly think, so when
Troy, maybe?
No, I honestly think it can be Zach. It's just going to be different. It's not going to be the same that we've seen from before, because the center, first off, you can't be too quiet or timid as the center. You are the hub of communication for that entire unit up front. You're not hearing that from the guard. You're not hearing that from the tackle. It's coming from right up there in the front, and that's Zach Frazier's role. Now, I do think that we see a different version of Zach Frazier in the locker room when he's talking to the media than what we see when he's on the football field. But I do want to kind of pick your brain a little bit too, since you've covered the team for a lot longer time than I have. Because I can watch interviews of Dermontti Dawson, and he seemed like a really softer-spoken type of guy whenever he was doing interviews. But that's just my initial impression. He seemed like a softer-spoken guy. He might not have been. What about Jeff Hardings? Like, how was he? Because I don't feel like everybody has to be a Marquise Pouncey in order to be a successful center.
No, the center doesn't necessarily need to be the center of attention or the center of leadership.
Yeah.
Okay. And I think you can have situations where, the center is just a guy. He's a follower on that group. These aren't criticisms, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
If anybody, these are pretty much inherent personality traits. Those of you who've been blessed to have your own children know that stuff doesn't form later in life. They are exactly who they are when they're like 2 years old.
Yeah.
You're not bringing anything out. They are who they are. Okay. I guess you can do some coaching up or whatever, as a parent or whatever, but you're not going to change who it is that they are.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I look more toward someone who would be the accountability police more so than the rah-rah. Your rah-rah you can get out of Mason McCormick. You can get that, believe it or not, especially when he's on his game, out of Broderick Jones.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Brod's a guy who can get you fired up.
Mm-hmm.
But somebody has to move out of the follower thing and into the leader thing. Now, Isaac, to my knowledge, in the time that he's been here, has done that once, and that was in advance of the playoffs when he stood up in front of the room, the whole room, not the offensive line, and everyone was like, whoa, he has a voice.
Mm-hmm.
And he let everyone hear what it was that he had to say entering this big game. This is a young group. I think they need it all the time.
No, I do see that and agree with that. And Zach talked about today, because you hear it obviously from Omar and Andy, you can see it through what they're doing through the draft, that the trenches are very, very important, that they're trying to build that through the draft because it's, number one, way more cost effective, but also you build that from the ground up. And 80% of the offensive line this year, of the starting five, is going to be, three of them are third-year players, and one of them's three of them are second-year players, and one of them's a third-year player. Somebody's got to become that guy, and you would like it to be that guy. And Zach was talking about, like, listen, we're building this core together up front, and we want to have this core for a long time. Well, then somebody, and maybe that'll come naturally. Maybe Zach will end up being that guy. Maybe Broderick will become that guy. Maybe if Broderick begins to figure stuff out on the field, he can start being more of the accountability guy in that room. But I think in terms of what Zach is doing in terms of communication and everything, I think he's the least of my concerns when we're talking about the offensive line, both in terms of performance and the kind of guy that he can be in the locker room for the rest of the guys.
Sergio Perez says, DK, a lot of us hold up the Steelers to a high standard of coaching and the way they make special players. How come? And he lists a bunch of former guys, Kenny Pickett, Najee Harris, Kevin Dotson, among others, say otherwise. What's closer to reality? There's a couple of realities within the scenario that you're putting forth, Sergio. One of them is that anybody, when they leave anywhere, is going to go to the new place and say that the old place sucked.
Yeah.
Okay. That happens in all walks of life. It happens, here at our little place. Okay. Somebody crosses the street and they go, whoa, shiny. Okay. And that's just, I think to some extent that's human nature. They also don't necessarily want to deal with, and I'm talking about these players now, their own shortcomings or the reasons why they might have not succeeded where they were. Okay. Now, I don't even know what you might be referring to in terms of saying, I don't remember Kenny Pickett saying something negative about the Steelers. Najee Harris said something about the facilities. And KD just went to where he went and just succeeded again. So I don't know anything about comments that they might have made. I do know that my own stance on this is that the Steelers are, how to put this, and this is not just Tomlin. This is, I think, the whole coaching staff. I think they're a little more the old school, if you want to give them the benefit of the doubt in the way they do things. So some of these players are going to go somewhere like, let's say, for example, to the Rams. Okay. And you go to the Rams and everything is all super high tech and sophisticated, and your cafeteria walls talk to you and wash the windows by themselves. Okay. And all that other fancy stuff. And you go there and you think, wow, man, I was in the Stone Age in Pittsburgh, when in fact it might not be relevant to football at all. I'd like to see the coaching approach in Pittsburgh advance itself by about 10 or 12 years. And I'm being broad here on purpose because there aren't really specifics to support it, at least not that I would waste anybody's time with. But it's not going to happen under this head coach. And it's one of countless reasons why, not personal, not taking a side or anything, where I said after this past season that I feel like the Steelers would be better off moving on at the head coaching position.
Yeah, I do think
it's a tough question to answer.
No, it's a tough question to answer because there's not one absolute answer to it. And that I think is a difficult thing for fans to accept. Let's just talk about Kenny Pickett, for example, because, Terry Bradshaw brought up, recently how the Steelers failed him, and he said some things that I didn't agree with. But I also think that he said some things that were very true. When we talk about the offensive line, I think about, okay, well, what's the situation that Ben Roethlisberger went into? Well, he went into a fantastic situation. He had an established offensive line in front of him that was very good. He had a strong run game behind him, strong group of running backs behind him with Willie Parker and Jerome Bettis. He had, his rookie year, he had Hines Ward and Plexico Burress and, tight end room. I don't remember who the tight end was. Jeremy Tooman, I think the tight end was at the time. So, not wholly explosive weapons, but good enough weapons to go with a really strong running game. So all he had to be was pretty much a game manager at that point. That's not what Kenny Pickett inherited. He had probably better weapons with Deontay Johnson and George Pickens and Pat Freiermuth and, Najee Harris and Jalen Warren, but the offensive line wasn't great. So there's just not one whole answer to the entire situation. There's always usually a lot of variables that explain faults on both sides of things. There were things that the Steelers did to fail some of those players, and there were some of those things that the players just didn't do well. And you can see quarterback play under the same offensive coordinator behind the same offensive line with the same weapons that performed way better. Now we're talking multiple quarterbacks. We're talking Ben Roethlisberger in 2021. We're talking about Mason Rudolph for 4 games in 2023. There's always truth somewhere, usually on both sides when it comes to those kind of convoluted situations.
Yes, I think both things can be true. It can be true that the players who leave here exaggerate stuff for their own purpose when it is that they do that. It also can be true that the Steelers, are dated. I'll say this until I'm purple in the face, but if the Steelers would, this one is specific. This one is Tomlin. If he would ever advance his own thinking beyond the hunker down mentality, he'd be a much better game day coach, instructional coach, play development coach. But what he does, and we've seen this in season countless times from him, when things don't go well, instead of changing this guy at that position or changing this scheme, what he does is he comes into the facility ranting and raving about tackling. Okay. Now, again, I can respect that for the same reason that we said earlier in the show that, ball control, ball security, and everything else, it does matter. And he is good at it.
Mm-hmm.
But there's more to the game in 2025.
There is more. And I think that's why, you'd like to see, when he makes, a hire such as Arthur Smith, who not that long ago was a very sought after offensive coordinator that became a head coach because he had a lot of success with the Titans, try to make decisions to, number one, let him run his true offense, which we did not see last year. And then also kind of let him handle it, let him be the true, don't try to put handcuffs on. Not saying he does, but I think the immediate handcuff last year was hiring Arthur Smith and then getting him a quarterback that can't throw to the middle of the field. Or won't throw to the middle of the field. That already kind of puts handcuffs on him without actually saying, hey, you can't do this, this, and this. Sometimes there just needs to be better, personnel decisions and allow everything to work together. And that's one thing I am seeing this year, specifically just on offense, talking about Arthur Smith, a lot of the changes they've made to the roster fit better what Arthur Smith wants to do on offense. Even if they do sign Aaron Rodgers would fit what Arthur Smith wants to do. He's played in a very similar system under Matt LaFleur for 4 years. Skylar Thompson even played under Mike McDaniel in Miami. Mike McDaniel also comes straight from the Kyle Shanahan tree. There are certain things that are happening this year that make more sense when it comes to that stuff, or maybe Tomlin can just, I think when he allows, if he can hire some guys that, and then just delegate more. That's pretty much the way that I can say it the best, probably.
Had a soul here, says DK and Chris. It felt like Mike Tomlin was melting down mentally in late 2023 after that 3-game slide, kept blaming the defense. I'm pretty sure you're referring to 2024. The 2023 team was the one that had the opposite of a slide because they rode Mason Rudolph into the playoffs.
Well, they did have that slide before those 3 games where they lost to the Cardinals, Patriots, and Colts.
They did, and it was in large part because of the defense. Okay, so this is that's also a possibility. I see late 2023, right. And I think of one thing.
Yeah.
Melting down mentally. I don't think he's the melting down mentally type. Okay. No. This is one extraordinarily strong-willed, larger than any room he's in presence. This man has. He has been through a lot more than a 3-game slide. He's handled, I use this example a lot, but the way he navigated, for example, the social injustice situations with the Steelers back around COVID time, the way he handled COVID time itself. These are situations that required you to be more than a football coach. Those of you who remember Bill Cowher going to Somerset after Flight 93, after September 11, and being there as part of those ceremonies with his jaw sticking out. Sometimes you just have to be more than a coach. Tomlin's done that. Cowher's done that. Before them, Chuck Noll did it in the face of, the awful 1970s here for what those meant for the city. I'm not talking about the football or the baseball or whatever, okay? But for the city, it was the worst of times. And Noll carried himself at a level above that. Tomlin is not that guy. Tomlin is not going to melt. And you cannot like him or whatever, like David Schaefer apparently doesn't here, or you can say that it's an ego thing or whatever you want that suits your perspective on this. But this is one, put it this way. What percentage, Chris, just for fun, this doesn't have to mean anything, of the people in that building right now are you thinking to yourself, man, we really want Aaron Rodgers here? Not the players, over the players' heads. like deep down inside, coaches, GMs, evaluators, Art Rooney, everybody, who do you think is going, wow, we've got to have Aaron Rodgers. We'll wait forever for Aaron Rodgers. How many? What percentage?
I mean, it's probably a lower percentage, but I also don't think that if it were just Tomlin and everybody else was against it, it wouldn't be happening, especially if Rooney said no.
Right. I agree with that.
Yeah, if Rooney said no, it's over. There's no waiting anymore. And Paul says 1% just Tomlin. It's not that. If Rooney said no to it and did not give his blessing to it, it would not be happening. It's just the way it is.
That's true.
Yeah.
I agree with that, but I also know that Rooney will listen to almost everything.
Yeah,
that Tomlin says on every front. I mean, you can look at these examples over recent years, and it's let's put it this way, and this is my point with this. Mm-hmm. He's going to get his way
most of the time.
That doesn't mean he's going to get. That doesn't mean he's going to get Rodgers, because that's up to Rodgers.
Right. Right.
Okay, but it does mean that within the Steelers world, he's going to get his way almost all of the time.
True.
And that tells me a lot about CJ. Are you talking about it here on the chats, or are you talking about our show? Not doing that at all.
I'm definitely not bashing Tomlin whatsoever.
Yeah, I don't know where you picked that up, unless you're just referring to the chat. In which case, there's a handful of people that are doing it. But Tomlin, he is strong-willed. I'm going to go back to that term. No, he did not melt down, and he's not going to melt down. And CJ clarifies that, he's referring to the chat. Even then, it looks to me, or feels to me, like it's about 50-50 in here. See, Steve C says it's why he's highly compensated. Now, that's how you claim the higher ground in the conversation.
Yeah.
I like that a lot.
I did see one comment. I don't remember who said it, but I did see one comment saying last year was Arthur Smith's offense. No, it was not.
No.
No, it was not. I wrote a whole thing on it on DKPittsburghSports.com with a lot of data to back up the fact that no, it was absolutely not Arthur Smith's offense. He tailored everything he could to who he had, but my gosh, that is not the way he wants to coach an offense or run an offense or teach an offense no. Not even close.
Randy Wagner gets our last question for the day. Says, I'm having difficulty finding an advantage in bringing in Aaron Rodgers. What advantage would the Steelers have, Chris?
I got a similar question in our live queues yesterday. They feel like they have a better chance to contend if Aaron Rodgers is their quarterback in 2025. We're talking 2025. We're not talking about long term. There's obviously not long term when the guy is going to turn 42 years old in December. But for 2025, they feel that their best chance to compete is with Aaron Rodgers as their quarterback. They are okay if Rodgers doesn't sign, and they are fine and have faith in Mason Rudolph. But the reason why they continue to wait for Rodgers is because they feel like the ceiling raises if Rodgers is with them as opposed to not being with them. So that is the reason why they continue to wait for Rodgers. That is the reason why that through these voluntary workouts, they continue to wait, because it's voluntary stuff. TJ Watt hasn't been there. DK Metcalf hasn't been there. Isaac Seumalo's not been there. Like, there are a few guys who are just not there who are even on the team. So that's all it is. It is all about this year. Let's give ourselves the best chance to win. That's the reason why.
And that's all the time that we have for today. When we come back after this brief break here, we're gonna take care of a little bit of business here. All right, we're going to get our subscription count here in a moment. Eric and Callie came in with 5 gifts today. Keegan Short did the same thing here. Kerry Russell is a staple with 1. I say staple in the positive context of the word staple. Are there negative connotations to staple? Stella Fierce came in with 10. Yeah. It's kind of.
You could shove it in your finger.
Who did that?
You could staple your finger back.
Why would we randomly bring up people putting staples in their fingers?
I mean, that's one negative connotation.
Okay. Damon Amendolara. I think I got that one right. That has to be I put the accent on the right syllable. Became a member today. Welcome to the show. Stella Fierce in with 10 gifts. And we appreciate each and every one of these. We're at a count of 2,548 memberships here on the show, on the road, hopefully, to 3,000 by the time we get to Latrobe. Does it feel like the community is growing, Chris? Does it seem like there's more like new or different names constantly?
Yeah, 100%. Of course, we see a lot of the regulars who have been here for a long time, but yeah, no, absolutely. We're starting to see more and more. First off, more green names.
Yeah.
And some of those green names I don't even recognize sometimes. So it's definitely growing for sure. And I think it's awesome to see. This has been a lot of fun for sure to continue to do this and to see what we're going to be doing during the season too.
Just to be clear here, by the way, about something here. Well, first, Keith throws up this important clarification. Don't forget that any gifted memberships that you take or accept don't renew. And on top of that, you're not eligible for another one. So it's $1 a month. If you're a Steelers fan, he's like going to bat for us here. It's way more than worth it. Let's get to 3,000. But kind of to Chris's point here, here's Dwayne. Hello, Steelers Nation. Comes in with a green. You know, Dwayne, and I apologize if you've been here all along, but I have a goofy memory about stuff like this. I'm pretty good at recognizing whenever there's new names and so forth. Mm-hmm. That's, you know, it's neat to have this build up the way that it has, and it's going to be even neater, I think, as we get into some of the, hopefully, not presuming anything here, get into some of the bigger numbers as we go deeper. Justin Watson, our good friend, just dropped a gift as well. Justin comes in with some really good insights. This is part of the stuff that when I talk about the community, not even up to and including when they challenge us, okay, and they do, as long as you keep it civil, okay. Like, people will come in on Chris's Chalk Talk, which, by the way, is part of this channel. It's part of this whole thing that we're doing here, and they're like, "Chris, hey, you're nuts. What are you doing, man? This is you don't know anything." Whatever. Okay, but the thing is, probably like 1 out of every 5 or 10 of those is going to be somebody who makes Chris think, "Hey, you know what? I might have messed that one up, or I might have not have thought of that possibility." You know what I'm saying? And it just makes you stronger.
Oh yeah, I'm always, and I read through a lot of the comments on here on the Chalk Talks. I even started yesterday. I went all the way back to the Caleb Johnson Chalk Talk, which I think might be one of our most viewed videos on this channel ever. But just because when it is actually, it's like it's close to 60,000. Yeah, so when a video has like that many views, you keep going back to see if there are any new comments, and you see some stuff where you're like, it's obviously not true or whatever, but yeah, you still learn things and start to think about things, or you get ideas for new Chalk Talks. Like I'm already going to be recording tomorrow's after we get off of this, but yeah, like I'm always reading, trying to think of possibly new things, or yeah, man, I got a whole summer of Chalk Talks to do. So
just wait till the season.
Yeah,
when you have this after a game, the material that you have and the intensity that everyone in the audience has toward wanting to understand what happened and why. And the difference between our breakdown show that Chris does and a lot of them, actually the overwhelming majority of them, is that Chris has the capability to go into the locker room and say, "Hey, where were you supposed to be on that?" Yeah. Something that no amount of film can tell you. You can be the world's greatest film splicer, and even when you hear those guys, they'll all say, "Well, depending on what he was supposed to be doing in that situation, ... because they don't know. The player knows, the coordinator knows, the head coach knows. That's it. That's it.
Yep. Yep. I mean, they are literally executing a play from a playbook that they all know. They know all the what each guy knows what their specific job was, and so there were multiple times, I mean, all throughout the season last year where there was one specific play I wanted to get a breakdown on, and multiple players at different times. A couple of times it was a coach. When you have that rapport and you can talk with people, in the locker room about things, you can get answers that you want.
No question. Jack Long gets our last shout for the day. Says, does our subscription here automatically renew? If you get it yourself, yeah, it does. It'll keep going. If it's a gift, it won't. It'll go poof after a month.
Yeah, you have to renew manually renew in order to keep the membership. So do that.
We'll do one more of these tomorrow, guys. We'll see you then.